Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you ask the clerk to report House Committee Substitute 1, please?
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 1.
General from McGoffin.
Move adoption.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion of the committee substitute? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. General from McGoffin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of this honorable body, let me begin by saying this first. With all that we've been going through, from the depths of our hearts, from those of us from Eastern Kentucky, we want to thank every member of this honorable body for what you have did through helping of donations, your time, your prayers, your thoughts. It's not only been much needed, but it's much appreciated, and we thank you from the depths of our heart for that and for what we're about to do here today. With that, I'm going to get into the details of House Bill 1 and what we're preparing to do to help our constituents in Eastern Kentucky that are suffering as we speak. The first thing that House Bill 1 will do will set up a fund known as the East Kentucky State Aid Funding for Emergencies. It's a mechanism to utilize for funding to distribute out for different purposes. It will be known as EK Safe, and it will create that. This will provide financial support to those located in the areas named in the Presidential Declaration in the Eastern Kentucky region impacted by the July 2022 storms and flooding. The eligibility for these funds for financial support from EK Safe will include cities, counties, urban county government, consolidated local government, unified local government, or charter county governments, nonprofits or public utility service providers, state agencies, or school districts. The financial support shall not cover any new construction inside the 100-year floodplain. If a recipient of monies, keep in mind, we're talking about government public entities here, okay, or nonprofits, not individual assistance. If they are recipients of money from EK Safe Fund and they subsequently receive monies for the same thing, for the same damages, then they will in turn refund back to the EK Safe Fund the monies that they received from, say, FEMA, for an example. So I'll give you an example. If a public facility has $100,000 in damage, and we go ahead and we give them the $100,000 to get everything corrected, FEMA comes along and they only give them $75,000, then they will reimburse that $75,000 back and keep the $25,000, and that $75,000 goes back into the EK Safe Fund to make sure they get made whole and getting everything. We're going to make them whole up front to get what they need, and then anything above that's necessary that FEMA or any other group may give them, or insurance, then it will be refunded back to the EK Safe Fund. This is a template that we used with the tornadoes in the last session for Western Kentucky. This is the same way we did that. We're doing it here for the flooding. Another thing that we will do in this bill is we will take the West Kentucky Tornado Fund that was only called SAFE at the time, and we will rename it as the WK Safe for Western Kentucky. It's two different sets of monies. And then we'll match the templates together to make sure everything is consistent with the spendings and appropriations of these monies in the East and in the West. So it does that. Now, with that fund being set up, we will then appropriate $200 million in the fiscal year of 2023 from the Budget Reserve Trust Fund account to the EK Safe Fund, $200 million. We will also then appropriate $75 million fiscal year 23 from the EK Safe Fund to military affairs. Then we will appropriate $40 million in the 23 fund from the EK Safe to military affairs to be used by the Division of Emergency Management for the advancement of monies to school districts or nonprofit or public utility service providers. No monies from this appropriation shall be awarded until all monies under Section 4 have been awarded. That's the $75,000. So let me talk briefly about this $75,000 so I can clarify something. It goes to the military affairs, and it's used through the emergency management program, just like it was in Western Kentucky. And so there are some people saying, well, there's no money in this bill for housing. We need housing. Well, that's not true. This goes to, it's 75 million. Did I say 75,000? 75 million, sorry. So this 75 million, the emergency management is purchasing things that are needed in Eastern Kentucky right now. And one of the things that they can purchase is intermediate housing. Now, I have even met with the governor and his staff about this. There's, I believe, 90-some more en route from Kentucky and out of state coming in right now. But they also have, when we begin to get our numbers closer and closer to our needs, the ability with this to buy intermediate housing. What we have to do and what we're focusing on, keep in mind, yesterday was 4 weeks. And so what we have to do right now is we have to be attending to immediate needs. We're not really ready to start looking at long term because we still got these immediate things going on with people living in tents. They're living in shelters. And we got to get a roof over these people's head before cold winter gets here, right? So there is monies in this bill to buy more trailers, to put roofs over people's head, to put them in a place where they've got heat, they've got water, they've got restroom facilities, and they can live rather than being in a tent. So there is monies to provide that. I just want to stress that there is monies to provide for intermediate housing for these people, okay? That is part of this bill and this appropriations. I talked about the other $40 million. That is $40 million of EK Safe is also being appropriated for operations and support services of the Department of Education for them to utilize and clean up. I think Knott County alone, and that's one of my counties, has already been out over $1 million in cleanup services, for repairs, for wraparound services for students. There's a multitude of uses for this funds for those school districts, and there's latitude there for them to use it as they need to make this recovery process. There's also an appropriation of $45 million for highways within the transportation cabinet. That is monies above and beyond what was already budgeted in our original budget, so that we can continue replacing bridges and doing things that was already on track before the flooding, and then this money can come in and cover all the damages from the flooding. So that way we're not having to take monies that was appropriated for repairs, especially in that area, and use it for flooding, and then we're still dragging behind on the other. So that money is for that. Then we will be appropriating $12,662,200 of the state physical fund of ARPA. The ARPA fund, $12,662,000 monies in ARPA will be going into this. That brings the grand total currently, and I will say this is the first step. This is, in my opinion, the first step. We got to come back and we got to see what the needs are, because the needs are changing daily. We're just a month out. A week from now, a month from now, there's going to be new things pop up that we need needs for, and we will address them when we get back. We're trying to get them something quick, immediately to them, to begin to help get people into places to stay, to get water lines repaired, to get electric, sewer, bridges built back, so that we can begin looking at a rebuilding process. So there's an immediate need. That's what we're meeting now to get us through till January, where we can come back and we'll have a better assessment of everything and begin to look at what we need then to send to them to further help. Any budget unit receiving insurance claim receipts relating to the response and recovery from flooding may request a restricted funds appropriation increase to enable that expenditure. Also, when we talk about our school systems, many have been shut down. Many are totally destroyed, or at least some. I know of two in one of my counties, so I'd say many in the totality of all the counties. So one of the things is we give waivers for up to 15 days for student attendance. We've also providing for up to 20 days of remote learning, and it can be so specific in the remote learning, it doesn't have to be the entire school system. It can get down to even a group, not just a classroom, but a group that they use this for. We're giving the superintendents flexibility. We're also providing emergency leave for teachers and classified and certified and classified, so that if they have a need to leave, maybe FEMA's going to be at their house and they need to be there, they can leave and they can get paid for that emergency leave time. Also, they would receive payment for these waiver days as well. And then we began to look at ADA. We also removed some of the red tape for local school boards dealing with bids and so forth, so that they can expedite repairs and things that are necessary to get their schools back up and operational. We need to get our children back in school. That's one thing that brings some sense of normalcy to these children. And they've been through a lot already in the past 2 years, and now they're impacted by this. So we got to get them back in to a sense of normalcy. Now, with that, we have touched on the ADA days and how that's going to work, and someone who is more knowledgeable about that is a gentleman from Todd, and I'm going to defer to him for the explanation of the ADA days.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As far as the ADA, there is a deviation already allowed. If there's a 10% deviation and there is a makeup to the SECA formula, this reduces that deviation down to 3%, so there is even more relief granted to the East Kentucky counties affected in the school districts. As far as there is also a corollary provision set for modification to the relief granted in the West Kentucky event, and that deals with revenue losses, which those school districts are already experiencing. And we have a declining over time subsidy to offset their revenue losses from the resulting property decreases, which reduces their revenue. The first year of that revenue loss for those districts will be reimbursed or subsidized at 100%. The second year will be at 2/3, and then the third year will be 1/3, and then it should be weaned off, as well as the property value should be increased. That would take care of both components of the East and the West. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Goffin.
Also, let me clarify misinformation, not that that ever comes out of Frankfort, but none of the funds from West Kentucky is being taken and put into the East Kentucky, okay? That's not happening, contrary to what some reports may say. And then the last section, section 12, is the declaration of emergency. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would ask this honorable body for their support of this much-needed relief for Eastern Kentucky in this first step in the beginning to provide help from us, the General Assembly, and I would be glad to answer any questions.